Hey there, Cricut crafters. Today I wanted to talk about different versions of heat presses that you can get. Now today I'm going to be specifically talking about the differences between getting something like the Cricut Easy Press or using a more industrial of those heat presses. You see, the large ones that you might see, the clamshell ones. Why would you choose this over that or that over this one? To give you a little bit of a backstory and an overview of myself and how I'm experienced to talk about this topic. I have owned a Cricut business for over 5 years now, and for the first 3 to 4 years, I used one of these, a regular iron, in fact, this exact one, to go ahead and make my iron-on projects. I also sold the things that I made with this. I made tons of t-shirts, I made, personalized stockings. I made those little elves for Christmas and so much. So it is a great option. You do not need to go ahead and purchase a heat press. If you are brand new to Cricut and it is not in the budget for right now, don't worry about it. Go ahead, you can use an iron, you can use what you have on hand, and I am not telling you at any point in this video that you need to go ahead and spend money on anything that you don't feel like you can afford right now. Maybe it's time to start upgrading your crafting and you're wanting to get more into the business side of it, production, because it is definitely more productive to have a heat press over something like an iron. And the reason for that is an iron, you're not able to give constant pressure over top of the whole thing. There's not going to be an even pressure. For an iron, you need to move it around. You need to push very hard, essentially put your entire body weight onto it to properly get the adhesive for that heat transfer material, which is what gets it to stick, right? The heat activates the adhesive, and that's what gets it to stick onto, let's say, your shirt or whatever fabric you're essentially applying that to. Maybe you're applying it to wood, because you could also do heat transfer vinyl with things like wood and canvas. And I mean, we can talk about those projects in another video, but definitely an option for you, but it's going to be a less effective method and the quality of the product is going to be less. I'm going to be honest with you, it will be less of a quality of the final project or product that you're going to get, which could eventually negatively impact your business. So eventually you might want to consider getting something that is more of a heat press. Maybe it's the Cricut Easy Press or the other type of heat press like I was talking today, or maybe it's something different altogether. So next we're going to talk about the Cricut Easy Press. So there are a few different options that you can get. There are different sizing options. You can get knockoff brands, off of Amazon and things like that, that people say work great. I personally used this Cricut Easy Press. My husband got it for me for my birthday, and I believe it was about 4 years into my Cricut business. And once I got that, wow, was I able to produce more products in a lot quicker time. The quality went up. But even though I had a 10 by 12 size heat press, I still was not able to get a fully even press throughout the entire time. Sometimes my decal was 12 by 12, and trying to, put the press on this side and then move it over a little bit to press the other side, I wasn't going to get an even press all the way around. So definitely something to consider. But I did use it for well over 2 years and had no problems with it breaking down on me. I loved using it, and the size was really helpful. You can also get things like the Cricut Mini Press, which is a really tiny one. It's kind of similar to like a mini iron, and you can go ahead and do smaller iron-on projects. You could do things like labels for shirts, and people use those a lot for their small business. So something else for you to maybe consider, but I would suggest getting as large as possible of a heat press if you're kind of in a lower budget. Instead of keep on upgrading every time, essentially go for whichever one you can afford. The largest size you can afford is the one I would suggest you go for. And the reason for that is, for example, if you're getting the 6x9 one, eventually your decals are probably at some point going to be a little bit larger than that, unless you're making like the little pocket size decals, you know what I mean? But if you're thinking of making things like shirts, like adult size shirts, then definitely something to consider. For example, the 10 by 12 one I had was a little bit more expensive, but instead of me having to upgrade each time when I wanted to increase my business and productivity, I went ahead and got that one, and then it was perfect for my small business. Now, over time, I did realize that the quality of my items were not as great. And that is not to say that the Cricut Easy Press is not good. I believe that that was personally user error. I did not have the strength, I guess, to push down hard, for example, on my Cricut Easy Press, because you do have to put pressure, a decent amount, for certain materials, fabrics, and iron-on vinyl that you use. Some businesses have absolutely no problem with it. They've used a Cricut Easy Press for hundreds and hundreds of products. They, highly recommend it. So that is why I'm suggesting it is more user error. It is myself and what is convenient for me and my business. Here we have my new heat press. So I personally live in Canada, so it was not an option to get one of those brands like Heat Press Nation or one of those highly recommended heat presses that you can get out there. So I did a lot of research, and unfortunately from where I lived, I was limited to what I could get. And also my budget, I was super limited. I did not have the money to go and spend $1,000 or $700 on a heat press. That was not in my budget at this point in time, and also not something that I personally and currently wanted to do. You do whatever you want and make sure to stay with whatever budget you're comfortable with. Like I said, for your business, you do not need to get a heat press like this. If you want to go at a lower price point, do what you need to do for yourself. You can still have a business without a heat press like this, okay? So there are a couple versions. This one you can see is the swing away one. It swings all the way around, and they don't all exactly do it this way. So this is just the one that I have, and I personally got this one off of Amazon. The drawer slides out, which is a really great feature it has as well. And this is one that you would call the swing away one. So you swing it, pull this out, put your t-shirt on, slide it on, and then you go ahead and you can close it. You do not need to put pressure. It does the pressure for you. It is constant pressure, and I personally got the 15 by 15 press. This will work for any of the shirts that I use for my business because it is the perfect size for my decals. I get an even press every time because of the plate. And this heat press came as a 5-in-1, so it comes with the hat press. I also got a plate press, which I won't necessarily use, a mug press, and things like that. So you definitely have more options instead of buying, for example, the Cricut Easy Press and then getting the Cricut mug press and all of those things. There's no issue with doing that at all. But if you're like me and you want something more compact, something that is all in one, this is definitely a great option for you. It just twists apart. You kind of twist things, so you do have to play, set it up to change it from this version to the mug press, for example. But again, it is something that you can do for multiple things, which I appreciate. And this one, I believe Canadian was about $300. So with shipping and taxes, it came to about $350 Canadian. So I believe in US, it's probably just under $300. And it does not have a brand on it, so if I can find the exact listing, I will put it right here and down below just for you to compare. If you are purchasing a heat press off of Amazon, please make sure you read all of the reviews. The amount of reviews that I read saying it didn't work, it broke, the company wouldn't let you send it back, wouldn't refund you. Do your research on what one would be the most beneficial for you and what you're wanting to use it for. Now for heat presses, there is another type you can get, and that is the clamshell one. This would be probably the most productive one, the most efficient. You can do a lot faster, I would say, and that is because you are essentially it doesn't swivel, right? So it would open up essentially like a clam, and then this bar would be like this, and you close it, done. Move your shirt, next. Whereas this one, I'm kind of taking the time to swivel it, pull it out. Now there are pros and cons to each of them. The clamshell one, people say they burn themselves a lot more because you're kind of limited. It opens up like this, so when you go to slide it in, possibly you could burn yourself, but honestly, I'm pretty clumsy. As you might know if you've seen my channel before, I tend to burn myself on this anyways. And I burn myself on my Cricut Easy Press and iron all the time. So I think that kind of comes with the territory of using some type of heat press, unless you're unlike me and you're not that clumsy. Those are a little bit to touch on. If you want more detail or a tutorial on how to use any of the things I just mentioned, I'm happy to do so. I currently have many tutorials on my channel showing how to use the iron as well as the Cricut Easy Press. This one is fairly new to me. I've had it for about 2 weeks, so I have 2 or 3 videos showing me using this, but not a specific tutorial yet on how to use this. If you're interested in that, I'm more than happy to do that for you, but I just want to give you a brief overview. So because I can get a constant press, I do have a lot of crafters that specifically have different medical needs where they cannot do constant pressure. Whatever it is, you don't need to explain it to us. What your medical stuff is your medical stuff, but it's not an option sometimes. Maybe they don't have the strength, maybe they're just not physically able to do that pressure like an iron or the Cricut Easy Press. So something like this is a lot easier for them, where you just push it down simply. I'm only showing like I'm struggling because the kids are sleeping and I have to be really quiet, so I'm doing it slowly. But you just lift it, that's it. You don't have to hold it while it's pressing. It just does its thing. The clamshell one does tend to be more expensive, which is why I did go ahead and get this one. It was about $200 more expensive for the ones that I was looking at, as well as on Heat Press Nation. So something definitely to think about. But I would say that is probably the most popular one and the most highly recommended one in the Cricut business world out there. So those are a little bit about those heat presses and kind of what they do and why I personally enjoy them. Again, like I mentioned, with the Cricut Easy Press, I do personally believe it was more user error and me just, you know, not being able to physically do all of that constant pressure. The size of the decals that I was using was larger than the heat press constantly. It just wasn't quite what I needed for my business, but maybe, like I said, for you it might work. So let me know. What do you think? Which one do you think would be the best for you, and what are your thoughts on it? There are other options like the Cricut Auto Press, and don't even get us started on that in the comments. If you've seen the Cricut Auto Press, this is the one right here. And again, this is just something that personally I cannot afford in my budget. It looks really cool. It looks like it would work wonderfully, and it is similar to the clamshell heat presses. So I do like that Cricut is able to kind of compete with their competitors and really kind of get themselves in the game there, because it is something great for those businesses. It has an auto open, which is another feature you can kind of upgrade to with your heat presses. And I mean, there are tons of options. You can get simple heat presses like this. You can get huge industrial ones that are giant for like a big factory type of business. I mean, these are your options, but this would be more of like an industrial crafter's heat press that you would get. I would say this is more of like a base model one, and then you can obviously get different upgrades. I mean, this one is, I'm manually closing it. There's auto ones, there's buttons, so there are definitely different options, and make sure to do your research. But that's a little bit on those and why I suggest the ones that I do. That is a wrap on today's video about different heat presses and which one might be best for you. I hope that gave you a little bit of insight and maybe some ideas of where you want to research and what you might need. As always, if you're looking for any specific clarification, tutorials, or have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to go into detail in another video for you. Follow for more Cricut tips and tricks on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. I have all of my socials up here where I share all things Cricut, business ideas, tips, tutorials, and so much more Cricut content. So I hope to see you all over there. In the meantime, until my next upload, please feel free to check out this video here and here, and I will see you on the next one. Happy crafting.